in a small, quiet town in Montana, where the nights were long and the stars shone brightly, lived a man named Daniel Grayson. He was an ordinary man in every way, kind, hard-working, and unassuming. Daniel spent most of his days tending to his family's farmland, which had been passed down through generations. The land was vast and fertile, but lately it had started to feel like a burden. The crops weren't growing as well as they used to, and the soil seemed dry no matter how much he watered it. Still, Daniel stayed busy, trying to keep everything together. One evening, after finishing his work in the fields, Daniel decided to dig a new irrigation trench near the edge of his property. As he worked, his shovel hit something hard beneath the surface. At first he thought it was just a rock, but when he brushed away the dirt, he saw something strange. It was smooth and metallic, glowing faintly with a soft blue light. Curious, Daniel dug around it carefully until he uncovered what looked like a large, circular object. It was about the size of a dinner plate and covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and change when he looked at them. Daniel's heart raced as he examined the artifact. He had never seen anything like it before. It felt warm to the touch, almost alive, and it hummed softly, as if responding to his presence. Unsure of what to do, he carried it back to his house and placed it on the kitchen table. For hours, he stared at it, wondering where it came from and why it was buried on his land. The next morning, strange things began to happen. When Daniel went outside to check on his crops, he noticed that the plants nearest to the spot where he had found the artifact were completely dead. Their leaves were shriveled, and the stems were brittle, as if they had been burned by some invisible force. Even more unsettling, the animals on his farm seemed agitated. The cows refused to go near the barn, and the chickens scattered whenever he approached. Something was wrong, and Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that the artifact was somehow responsible. That night, as he sat alone in his house, Daniel tried to ignore the growing sense of unease. But then, something extraordinary happened. As he reached out to touch the artifact again, it began to glow brighter, pulsing with energy. A sudden wave of heat filled the room, and for a brief moment, Daniel felt as though he could see the entire universe stretching out before him. Stars flickered in the distance, and planets spun in endless orbits. It was both beautiful and terrifying. Unbeknownst to Daniel, the artifact was no ordinary object. It was the core of a weapon known as the Star-Annihilator, a device capable of destroying entire solar systems. Created eons ago, during a galactic war, it had been hidden on Earth to prevent its misuse. Now, thanks to Daniel's discovery, it had awakened, and with it came chaos. Far away, in Arizona, a young astrophysicist named Claire Bennett was working late at her observatory. She loved her job, spending countless nights gazing at the stars and studying the mysteries of the universe. That evening, however, something unusual caught her attention. While analyzing data from her telescope, she noticed strange anomalies in the night sky. Several distant stars appeared to be dimming rapidly, almost as if they were being extinguished one by one. Even more puzzling, the energy readings suggested that the disturbances were originating not from outer space, but from somewhere on Earth itself. Claire frowned as she reviewed the data. This wasn't possible, at least, not according to everything she knew about physics. Determined to get to the bottom of it, she cross-referenced the coordinates of the energy source and traced it to a remote area in Montana. Her curiosity piqued. She decided to investigate further. Little did she know that her path was about to cross with Daniel's, and together they would uncover secrets that would change the fate of humanity forever. For now, though, Daniel remained oblivious to the larger implications of his discovery. All he knew was that the artifact was unlike anything he had ever encountered, and it seemed to respond to his emotions. When he felt calm, the glow faded and the hum softened. But when he grew anxious or frustrated, the light intensified, and the air around him crackled with energy. One evening, While struggling to fix a broken fence, Daniel let out a shout of anger. In that instant, the artifact flared brightly, and a nearby tree disintegrated into dust. Shocked, Daniel stumbled backward, his mind racing. What had he unleashed? And more importantly, how could he stop it? As the days passed, the effects of the artifact became harder to ignore. Dead zones began appearing across Daniel's property, areas where nothing, not even grass, could survive. The local wildlife fled, and the once peaceful countryside grew, eerily silent. Daniel knew he couldn't keep this secret any longer. Desperate for answers, he turned to the internet, searching for anyone who might understand what he had found. That's when he came across Claire's research. Her theories about cosmic disturbances matched what he was experiencing, and he realized she might be the only person who could help him. Meanwhile, Claire had already booked a flight to Montana, armed with her equipment and a fierce determination. To solve the mystery, she prepared to meet the man at the center of it all. Neither of them could have guessed how their meeting would set off a chain of events that would ripple across the galaxy and beyond. As Daniel Grayson grappled with the strange artifact in his small Montana home, events far beyond Earth began to unfold. The awakening of the Star-Annihilator had not gone unnoticed by those who watched the cosmos closely. Among them were the Zetharians, an advanced alien race that had been monitoring humanity for centuries. Their sleek, black ships, silent and shadowy, began descending into Earth's atmosphere, causing panic among the world's population. The first sighting occurred over New York City. A massive vessel hovered above the skyline, its surface shimmering like liquid metal under the sun. People stopped in their tracks, pointing and gasping as news helicopters circled the mysterious craft. Similar sightings were reported across the globe in London, Tokyo, Sydney, and beyond. No one knew why these aliens had come or what they wanted, but their presence was undeniable. Commander Vela, the leader of the Zetharian fleet, wasted no time making contact. Through a telepathic link, she communicated directly with world leaders, bypassing all forms of human technology. Her voice echoed in their minds, calm yet firm, carrying an urgency that left no room for doubt. "We are here because your planet has awakened something ancient and dangerous," she said. "The Star-Annihilator must be contained immediately, or it will bring ruin not only to Earth, but to countless worlds." Her words sent shockwaves through governments worldwide. Emergency meetings were called, and military forces scrambled to prepare for the unknown. Some leaders dismissed Vela's warnings as intimidation tactics, while others took them seriously. Tensions rose as nations debated how to respond. Should they trust the Zetharians, or should they assume the worst and prepare for war? Back in Montana, Daniel remained unaware of the global chaos unfolding around him. He spent most of his time researching the artifact, trying to understand its purpose and origin. The more he interacted with it, the more unpredictable it became. One evening, as he sat alone in his dimly lit kitchen, the artifact emitted a sharp pulse of light. Startled, Daniel dropped it onto the table, where it spun slowly, glowing brighter than ever before. Suddenly, a loud hum filled the air, and outside, the ground trembled slightly. It was as if the artifact was communicating not with words, but with energy. Frustrated and scared, Daniel turned to the internet again, searching for answers. That's when he stumbled upon Claire Bennett's research. Her name appeared repeatedly in articles about cosmic anomalies, and her theories aligned eerily well with what he was experiencing. Determined to reach out, Daniel sent her an email describing his situation in vague terms, careful not to reveal too much. To his surprise, she replied almost immediately. Claire had already arrived in Montana by then, having rented a car and driven straight to the area pinpointed by her data. When her phone buzzed with Daniel's message, she felt a surge of excitement and relief. Someone else knew what was happening, and perhaps together, they could make sense of it. She quickly arranged to meet him at his farm. When Claire pulled up to Daniel's property, she was struck by how quiet it felt. The fields looked barren, and there was an unnatural stillness in the air. Daniel greeted her cautiously, unsure of what to expect. He was taller than she imagined, with tired eyes and dirt-streaked hands. Despite his rough appearance, there was a kindness about him that put her at ease. "Are you the one who emailed me?" Claire asked, stepping out of her car. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, that's me. Thanks for coming. I wasn't sure anyone would believe me." Claire smiled faintly. "Believe me, I have seen some weird stuff lately. Mind showing me what you found?" They walked inside, where the artifact sat on the kitchen table, glowing faintly. Claire froze for a moment, staring at it in awe. Up close, it was even more mesmerizing than she had imagined. The patterns etched into its surface seemed to shift and swirl, almost like they were alive. She reached out tentatively, but Daniel stopped her. "Careful," he warned. "It reacts to emotions. I don't know exactly how, but it's dangerous." Claire withdrew her hand, nodding. "I think I know what this is, or, at least, I have a theory. But we need to figure out why it's here and what it wants." As they talked, Daniel explained everything that had happened since he unearthed the artifact. He told her about the dead zones spreading across his land, the animals fleeing, and the strange visions he experienced when he touched it. Claire listened intently, jotting down notes and asking questions. By the time they finished, the sky outside had grown dark. "We're running out of time," Claire said finally. "If the Zetherians are here, it means they see this as a serious threat. We need to find out more about the artifact before things escalate." Before they could discuss further, a loud buzzing sound filled the air. Both Daniel and Claire rushed outside to see a small drone hovering above the property. Its design was unmistakably alien, sleek and metallic, with blinking lights along its edges. It scanned the area briefly before zooming off into the night sky. "They know where we are," Claire said, her voice tense. "This just got a lot more complicated." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, feeling overwhelmed. "What do we do now?" Claire thought for a moment, then grabbed her bag from the car. "We leave. Now. If the Zetherians are watching us, we can't stay here. They'll want answers, and we're not ready to give them yet." Reluctantly, Daniel agreed. Together, they packed what little they could carry and set off in Claire's car, leaving behind the artifact and the life Daniel had always known. As they drove away, neither of them noticed the faint glow emanating from the kitchen window, pulsing softly in the darkness. Hours later, they stopped at a remote motel to regroup. Claire spread out maps and documents on the bed, explaining her plan to track down the origins of the artifact. According to her calculations, there might be clues hidden in ancient ruins scattered across the globe. If they could piece together enough information, they might stand a chance of understanding the weapon and stopping it, but their journey wouldn't be easy. Unknown to them, General Richard Hale, a high-ranking officer in the U.S. military, had also taken notice of the artifact. Hale led a secretive organization tasked with advancing Earth's technological capabilities at any cost. When reports of the Zetherian ships reached his ears, he saw an opportunity. If humanity could harness the power of the they could become unstoppably a force to be reckoned with in the galaxy. Hale dispatched a team of operatives to locate Daniel and retrieve the artifact. They moved swiftly and silently, tracking the pair's movements through surveillance drones and intercepted communications. By the time Daniel and Claire realized they were being followed, it was almost too late. One night, as they camped in a secluded forest, headlights pierced through the trees. Armed men surrounded them, demanding the artifact. Daniel and Claire barely escaped, thanks to Claire's quick thinking and a narrow path through the woods. But the encounter left them shaken. They couldn't keep running forever, and sooner or later, they would have to face the truth. The fate of the world and, possibly the universe rested in their hands. As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Daniel and Claire pressed onward. They didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: The Star-Annihilator had awakened, and with it came chaos that would test them in ways they never imagined. Daniel and Claire pushed forward, their journey marked by both fear and determination. The artifact's power loomed over them like a storm cloud, unpredictable and dangerous. They knew they couldn't keep running forever, but every step they took seemed to bring new challenges. As they drove through the rugged landscapes of the American West, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on their shoulders. The world around them was changing both because of the artifact and because of the forces now hunting them. One evening, as they camped in a quiet desert valley, Daniel decided to test the artifact again. He had been avoiding it since fleeing his farm, fearing what might happen if he lost control. But curiosity gnawed at him. What exactly was this thing? Why did it respond to his emotions? And most importantly, could he learn to control it? Claire watched nervously as he placed the artifact on the ground. It glowed faintly, its surface shimmering like water under moonlight. "Be careful," she warned. "We don't know what it'll do." "I know," Daniel replied, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "But we can't figure this out unless I try." Taking a deep breath, Daniel focused on calming his mind. He thought about peaceful things, the sound of rain, the warmth of sunlight, the quiet hum of nature. Slowly, the artifact dimmed, its glow fading until it looked almost ordinary. Encouraged, Daniel let himself feel anger next. He thought about the men chasing them, about General Hale and his relentless pursuit. Almost instantly, the artifact flared brightly, pulsing with energy. A gust of wind swept through the valley, kicking up dust and making Claire shield her face. "Okay, that's enough," she shouted, grabbing Daniel's arm. "You're going to blow us up or something." Daniel quickly pulled back, forcing himself to relax. The artifact settled down once more, but the demonstration left them both shaken. It was clear now that the weapon responded directly to Daniel's emotions, amplifying them in ways neither of them fully understood. Claire scribbled notes furiously in her journal, trying to make sense of what they had just witnessed. "This is incredibly and terrifying," she said finally. "It's like the artifact uses your feelings as fuel. If you lose control, even for a second, it could destroy everything around you." Daniel nodded grimly. "That's why I need to stay calm. But how am I supposed to do that when the whole world feels like it's falling apart?" They didn't have an answer to that question. Instead, they packed up their camp and continued driving, heading toward the coordinates Claire had identified from her research. According to ancient texts and star maps, there was a hidden site in New Mexico where similar artifacts had supposedly been found centuries ago. If they could uncover any clues there, they might stand a chance of understanding the Star-Annihilator and perhaps finding a way to deactivate it. Meanwhile, General Richard Hale was growing impatient. His operatives had failed to capture Daniel and retrieve the artifact, and reports of Zetherian activity were increasing. Hale's superiors were pressuring him to act decisively, but he refused to back down. To him, the artifact represented humanity's greatest opportunity, a chance to rise above the chaos of Earth and claim its place among the stars. Hale convened a meeting with his top scientists, presenting them with data stolen from Claire's observatory. "This is our chance," he told them, pointing to diagrams of the artifact's energy signatures. "If we can replicate its technology, we won't need to bow to anyone, not the Zetherians, not anyone. We'll be untouchable." The scientists hesitated, warning him of the risks involved. "Sir, this is uncharted territory," one of them said cautiously. "If we mishandle it, the consequences could be catastrophic." Hale dismissed their concerns with a wave of his hand. "Every great leap comes with risk. I didn't ask for excuses, I asked for results." Under his orders, the team began working tirelessly to reverse engineer the artifact based on the fragments of information they had gathered. They managed to create a crude prototype, a device capable of emitting bursts of energy similar to those produced by the Star-Annihilator. Hale ordered a test immediately, eager to see its potential. The experiment took place in a remote military base surrounded by barren desert. Soldiers stood ready as technicians activated the prototype. At first, nothing happened. Then, a blinding flash of light erupted from the device, followed by a shockwave that knocked everyone off their feet. When the dust settled, the target, Arion, abandoned building used for the test, was completely gone, reduced to nothing but ash. Hale grinned, satisfied with the results. Perfect, he muttered to himself. Now we show the universe what humanity is made of. Unbeknownst to Hale, however, the Cytherians had detected the energy surge. Commander Vela observed the event from her flagship, her expression grim. Humanity had taken its first reckless step toward self-destruction, and she couldn't afford to wait any longer. She dispatched a fleet of ships to Earth, intending to neutralize the threat before it spiraled further out of control. Back on the road, Daniel and Claire reached the ruins in New Mexico. The site was tucked away in a desolate canyon, its crumbling stone structures half buried by sand. Ancient carvings covered the walls, depicting scenes of celestial battles and strange, otherworldly beings wielding weapons of immense power. Claire examined the carvings closely, her eyes widening as she pieced together their meaning. These symbols match the patterns on the artifact, she explained to Daniel, tracing her fingers over the weathered stone. Whoever built this place knew about the Star-Annihilator or something very similar. Look here. She pointed to a section of the wall, showing a figure holding a glowing object. Surrounding the figure were images of destruction, shattered planets, burning stars, and lifeless worlds. What does it mean? Daniel asked, his voice heavy with dread. It means we're dealing with something far older and far deadlier than we realized, Claire replied. These people must have created the weapon or at least studied it, and judging by these pictures, they paid a terrible price for it. As they explored deeper into the ruins, they discovered a hidden chamber beneath the main structure. Inside, they found remnants of advanced technology fused with the rock, as if the materials had melted together over time. In the center of the room lay a pedestal, cracked and worn but still intact. Claire approached it cautiously, noticing that it bore markings identical to those on the artifact. This has to be important, she said, placing the artifact gently onto the pedestal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the room came alive with light. Holographic projections flickered into existence, showing images of distant galaxies and alien civilizations. Voices echoed in a language neither of them understood, speaking urgently about containment, sacrifice, and balance. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. What are they saying? Claire shook her head. I don't know yet, but I think they're warning us. Suddenly, the holograms shifted, focusing on a single image. A massive, swirling vortex consuming everything in its path. It was accompanied by a single word, repeated over and over, written in glowing script across the walls. Claire recognized it immediately. Was the name of the weapon, the Star-Annihilator, she whispered. They called it the end of all things before they could process what they had learned. Alarms blared outside the ruins. Armed vehicles screeched to a halt nearby, and soldiers poured out, surrounding the entrance. General Hale had found them. Drop the artifact and step away. A voice boomed through a megaphone. You're under arrest. Daniel and Claire exchanged panicked glances. There was no way out. They were trapped. But as the soldiers advanced, the artifact began to glow brighter, reacting to Daniel's rising fear. The ground beneath their feet trembled, and cracks spread across the chamber walls. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain. The chaos unleashed by the storm was only beginning. The soldiers closed in, their weapons trained on Daniel and Claire. The air was thick with tension as General Hale's voice echoed through the canyon. Hand over the artifact now, he demanded, his tone sharp and commanding. But Daniel and Claire knew they couldn't comply. Giving the Star-Annihilator to Hale would be like handing a loaded gun to a child. It was too dangerous, too unpredictable. Claire glanced at Daniel, her mind racing. She could see the fear in his eyes, but she also saw determination. If they didn't act quickly, they'd be captured or worse. "We need to get out of here," she whispered urgently. "Can you use the artifact to distract them?" Daniel hesitated. He had seen firsthand how destructive the artifact could be, and the thought of using it again filled him with dread. But what choice did they have? Taking a deep breath, he focused on the anger boiling inside him, anger at Hale, at the soldiers, at the entire situation. The artifact responded instantly, glowing brighter and pulsing with energy. A low hum filled the chamber, growing louder with each passing second. "Get down," Claire shouted, pulling Daniel behind a crumbling stone pillar, just as the artifact unleashed a burst of energy. The shockwave rippled through the room, knocking over debris and sending soldiers stumbling backward. Dust and rocks tumbled from the ceiling, partially blocking the entrance and buying them precious time. "This way," Claire yelled, grabbing Daniel's arm and leading him deeper into the ruins. They ran through narrow tunnels, their footsteps echoing against the ancient walls. Behind them, the soldiers regrouped and gave chase, shouting orders and firing warning shots that ricocheted off the stone as they fled. Daniel struggled to keep his emotions in check. The artifact continued to pulse in his hands, reacting to every spike of fear or frustration. "I can't control it," he gasped, his voice trembling. "It's getting stronger." "You have to," Claire replied firmly, glancing back at him. "If you lose focus, we're done for." They finally emerged into an open courtyard, where sunlight streamed through gaps in the canyon walls. Claire spotted a rusted metal ladder leading up to the surface. "There, climb," she urged, pushing Daniel toward it. He scrambled up as quickly as he could, the artifact still glowing faintly in his grip. Claire followed close behind, her heart pounding. Just as she reached the top, a bullet whizzed past her head, embedding itself in the rock. She ducked instinctively and pulled herself onto the ledge. Rolling onto the ground beside Daniel, they didn't stop to catch their breath. Sprinting across the desert terrain, they headed for Claire's car, which was parked a short distance away. Bullets kicked up dirt around them, but they pressed on, fueled by adrenaline. When they finally reached the vehicle, Claire slid into the driver's seat while Daniel climbed into the passenger side. She started the engine and floored the accelerator, tires spinning before catching traction. Behind them, the soldiers piled into their trucks and gave chase. The pursuit stretched across miles of barren landscape, dust clouds rising in their wake. Claire drove recklessly, swerving to avoid obstacles and cutting corners as tightly as possible. Daniel clutched the artifact tightly, trying to steady his breathing. Every jolt of the car sent waves of panic through him, causing the artifact to flare unpredictably. "We can't outrun them forever," Daniel said, his voice strained. "They'll catch us eventually." "Not if we stay smart," Claire replied, her eyes scanning the horizon. She spotted a cluster of rocky outcroppings ahead and steered toward them. "Hold on, we're losing them here," she maneuvered the car into a narrow crevice between two large boulders, hiding it from view. The soldiers' vehicles roared past, kicking up clouds of sand as they sped away. For a moment, there was silence. Then, Claire let out a shaky laugh. That was close, but their relief was short-lived. As they sat there, catching their breath, Daniel noticed something alarming. The artifact was glowing brighter than ever before, its light seeping through his fingers. "Claire," he began, his voice trembling. "Something's wrong." Claire turned to look at him, her expression turning serious. "What is it?" "I don't know," Daniel admitted, "but I think it's overheating." Before either of them could react, the artifact emitted a deafening hum. A wave of energy surged outward, creating a shimmering barrier around the car. The air crackled with electricity, and the temperature inside the vehicle skyrocketed. Claire frantically tried to start the engine, but it wouldn't turn over. "We're stuck," she cried. Outside, the soldiers had doubled back, alerted by the sudden surge of energy. They surrounded the crevice, shouting orders and aiming their weapons. Through the haze of heat and light, Daniel and Claire could see General Hale step forward, his face twisted with triumph. "You've made this far more difficult than it needed to be," he called out. "Now hand it over, or we'll take it by force." Daniel clenched his fists, battling the torrent of emotions threatening to overwhelm him. Fear, anger, desperation, of it coursed through him, feeding the artifact's power. He knew he couldn't let Hale win, no matter what. Summoning every ounce of willpower, he forced himself to calm down, focusing on Claire's steady presence beside him. Slowly, the artifact's glow dimmed, and the barrier dissipated. Hale smirked, thinking they had given up. "Good choice," he said, motioning for his men to move in. But Claire wasn't about to surrender. Spotting a loose rock near the car's dashboard, she grabbed it and smashed the window. Ignoring the shards of glass, she leaned out and hurled the rock toward one of the soldiers' vehicles. It struck the windshield, causing the driver to swerve and crash into another truck. Chaos erupted among the soldiers as they scrambled to regain control. "Go," Claire shouted, shoving Daniel out of the car. Together, they sprinted toward the rocky outcroppings, using the jagged terrain to evade capture. The soldiers fired after them, but their aim was wild, and the pair managed to slip away into the labyrinth of stones. When they finally collapsed behind a large boulder, exhausted and out of sight, Daniel looked at Claire with gratitude. "Thanks," he panted. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "Let's not find out," she replied with a weak smile. "But we can't keep running like this. We need a better plan." As they caught their breath, Daniel studied the artifact in his hands. Its glow had faded almost completely, leaving it looking deceptively harmless. "This thing, it's alive," he murmured. "It feeds on me, on my emotions. If we're going to stop it, I need to understand why." Claire nodded thoughtfully. "Maybe the answers are out there in space. If this artifact came from somewhere else, then maybe its creators left clues elsewhere in the galaxy." Daniel stared at her, stunned. "You mean, leave Earth?" "It's our only shot," Claire insisted. "If we stay here, Hale will get his hands on the artifact and who knows what he'll do with it. The Zitharians won't wait forever. Either we need to take the fight to them." Daniel hesitated, the weight of her words sinking in. Leaving everything behind, the farm, his life, the planet itself, was unthinkable. But so was letting the Star-Annihilator fall into the wrong hands. Finally, he nodded. "Okay, let's do it." Little did they know, their decision would set them on a path far beyond anything they could have imagined. The artifact held secrets older than time, and unlocking them would require courage, sacrifice, and a journey into the unknown. As they prepared to leave Earth behind, the stakes grew higher than ever. The fate of humanity and, perhaps the entire universe, rested in their hands. Daniel and Claire knew they couldn't stay on Earth any longer. With General Hale's forces closing in and the Zitharians watching from above, their options were running out. The artifact, the Star-Annihilator, was too dangerous to leave behind, but carrying it meant taking its chaos with them wherever they went. They needed a way to escape, and fast. As they hid in the rocky outcroppings, Claire pulled out her laptop and began searching for answers. She had spent years studying ancient texts and cosmic anomalies, and now she turned to those same resources for help. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she cross-referenced star maps, alien symbols, and cryptic messages left by long-lost civilizations. Finally, she found something: a set of coordinates encoded within the patterns on the artifact itself. "These numbers, they're not random," Claire said, excitement creeping into her voice. "They point to a location deep in space. I think it's where the creators of this thing came from." Daniel frowned, staring at the screen. "You mean we're actually going to leave Earth? Just like that?" Claire nodded firmly. If we want to stop this thing, we don't have a choice. Whatever made this weapon must have left instructions or, at least some way to shut it down. We need to find them. But how? Daniel asked, his voice heavy with doubt. We don't even have a spaceship. Claire smiled faintly, her mind racing. That's what I thought too. But remember those ruins back in New Mexico? There was something buried beneath them, a ship, or at least part of one. Daniel blinked in surprise. You're saying there's an actual spaceship hidden under those rocks? Not just rocks, Claire replied. The tech fused with the stone, it wasn't human-made. It could still work if we can get it running again. Without wasting another moment, they packed up their belongings and headed back toward the ruins. The journey was risky. Soldiers and drones likely patrolled the area, but they moved cautiously, sticking to shadows and avoiding open spaces. When they finally reached the canyon, they found it eerily quiet. The soldiers had withdrawn, probably regrouping elsewhere, leaving the site abandoned for now. They descended into the hidden chamber once more, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. The pedestal where they had placed the artifact earlier remained intact, its surface glowing faintly, as if reacting to their presence. Claire led Daniel to a section of the wall that looked different from the rest, covered in metallic panels etched with alien script. She pressed her hand against it, and with a low hum, the wall slid open, revealing a narrow passageway. Inside, they discovered the remnants of a sleek, otherworldly vessel. It was small, but advanced, its surface smooth and unmarked, except for faint lines of light running along its edges. Dust coated the interior, but the controls appeared functional, glowing softly when touched. Claire examined the dashboard, her eyes lighting up with recognition. This is it, she whispered. Our ticket off this planet. Daniel hesitated, stepping inside cautiously. Are you sure this thing still works? It looks like it's been sitting here for centuries. It's alien technology, Claire explained. It might not follow the same rules as ours. If we can power it up, it should be fine. She began tinkering with the controls, using her knowledge of physics and engineering to decipher the ship's systems. After several tense minutes, the engines roared to life, vibrating through the chamber. We're really doing this, Daniel muttered, half in awe and half in disbelief. Leaving Earth. Claire gave him a reassuring smile. It's not forever. We'll come back with answers. Before they could take off, however, the ground trembled violently. Alarms blinked outside, and the sound of approaching vehicles echoed through the canyon. General Hale's men had returned, and this time, they weren't alone. A massive Zitharian ship descended overhead, casting a shadow over the ruins. Soldiers poured into the chamber, weapons raised, while the alien's drone scanned the area. Hale himself strode in moments later, his face twisted with fury. You've caused enough trouble, he barked, pointing at Daniel. Hand over the artifact, or I'll take it by force. From above, Commander Vela's voice echoed telepathically. Stand down, humans. The artifact is not yours to claim. Caught between two powerful forces, Daniel and Claire exchanged a glance. They didn't have time to negotiate or fight. Without hesitation, Claire activated the ship's thrusters, sending a burst of energy rippling through the chamber. Rocks tumbled from the ceiling, creating a barrier between them and their pursuers. Seizing the opportunity, Claire piloted the ship upward, breaking through the canyon walls and into the open sky. For a moment, they hovered above the desert, watching as both Hale's forces and the Zitharians scrambled to respond. Then, with a sudden surge of speed, the ship shot into the atmosphere, leaving Earth far behind. As they traveled through space, the enormity of what they had done began to sink in. Below them, Earth shrank into a blue dot, surrounded by endless blackness. Daniel stared out the window, feeling a mix of fear and wonder. I never thought I'd see Earth from up here, he said quietly. It's beautiful. Claire nodded, her expression thoughtful and fragile. That's why we have to protect it, Tevin, if it means leaving it behind. The ship's navigation system guided them toward the coordinates Claire had decoded earlier. Their destination was a distant planet orbiting a dying star, its surface covered in ruins that matched the patterns on the artifact. As they approached, the sight took their breath away. Towering structures rose from the barren landscape, their surfaces etched with the same glowing symbols they had seen in New Mexico. It was clear that this place had once been home to an advanced civilization, but now it was lifeless and desolate. Landing the ship near the largest structure, Daniel and Claire stepped outside, their boots crunching against the dusty ground. The air was thin and cold, and the sky glowed faintly with hues of red and orange. Claire held a scanner in one hand, analyzing the environment as they walked. "This place is ancient," she murmured, "but it feels alive somehow." Daniel carried the artifact, which pulsed gently in response to their surroundings. "Do you think the creators are still here?" he asked nervously. "I don't know," Claire admitted, "but if they left anything behind, it's probably inside." They entered the nearest building, its massive doors opening automatically as they approached. Inside, they found a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and strange machinery. In the center stood a pedestal similar to the one in the ruins on Earth. Claire carefully placed the artifact on it, and immediately, the room sprang to life. Lights flickered on, and projections of stars and planets filled the air, showing the history of the galaxy. The voice echoed around them not in words, but in emotions and images. They saw visions of a great war, fought with weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. Among these weapons was the Star-Annihilator, created as a last resort to end the conflict. But it had come at a terrible cost. The civilization that built it had been wiped out, consumed by the very power they sought to control. Claire translated the message as best she could. "They're warning us," she said grimly. "This weapon isn't meant to be used. It's meant to be contained. If we don't stop it, it will destroy everything." Daniel clenched his fists, his heart pounding. "Then tell me how to stop it." The projections shifted, showing a series of steps required to deactivate the artifact. It involved aligning certain symbols, channeling emotional energy, and making a final sacrifice. Daniel swallowed hard. What kind of sacrifice? Claire hesitated, her eyes meeting his. "Yourself. It needs someone to anchor its power, to absorb it completely. Otherwise, it'll keep spreading until it consumes the universe." Daniel stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. He had known the artifact was dangerous, but he hadn't realized the full extent of its cost. For a moment, fear gripped him, threatening to overwhelm him. But then he remembered Eartha people, the animals, the fields he had worked so hard to tend. He couldn't let it all be destroyed. "I'll do it," he said finally, his voice steady, despite the storm raging inside him. "If it means saving everyone, I'll do it." Claire grabbed his arm, her eyes filled with determination. "Not alone. We'll figure this out together." As they prepared to begin the deactivation process, the ship's alarms blared. Outside, a fleet of Zitharian vessels had arrived, surrounding the planet. Commander Vela's voice echoed once more. "You cannot hide from us. Surrender the artifact or face annihilation." Daniel and Claire exchanged a glance, knowing their time was running out. Whatever happened next, they would face it together.